So I think the calendar of the future has to, in some ways, disappear into the background. I don't know how and when that happens, but it has to no longer be a, now I go to my calendar and think about calendaring. I have to really get to a place where it is seamlessly woven into the other tasks that I'm doing, what the analysts love to call contextual collaboration. The calendar hasn't quite succumbed to contextual collaboration yet. Part of it is the PDA or mobile device mentality of, okay, let me just check my calendar. Do I have that time available? But, you know, in an iPad or, you know, that kind of device configuration, it's, I have to stop what I'm doing, click the big button, go over to my calendar, get to the day that I'm looking. There's like 17 steps to go be productive in the calendar. Whereas it should be, I'm looking at a document and now I need to know if on July 18th I can do something with that document. So our thinking in Project Vulcan and lots of other people's thinking in, you know, some of the projects we see right now is how do you get away from that task orientation and much more to a process orientation or a contextual orientation. I don't know, I've worked with calendaring for, what did we say, 15, 16 years, and it hasn't happened yet. I think there will still, because of the nature of the calendar driving my activity, still be a discrete activity, but it should get more integrated into other things. And then I think the other question that really has to be answered is how much sharing do I end up doing? I think in most companies still, people don't make their calendar wide open, they don't let people see what they're working on, and there has to be a way to make that socially acceptable in the company, just like it has been to share my documents and share my knowledge. Right, because I mean we've gone down this curve in collaboration in general. When we started shipping notes 20 years ago, we had to teach companies why it would be good to share the information that everybody had in the company. Most companies were, my knowledge is my value to the company. And so our first notes customers actually had to put incentive programs in place for humans to get compensated for putting stuff into notes databases. It's kind of the same with calendars. I still don't really feel comfortable telling people what am I spending my time on every day. My own staff, though, probably could really benefit from seeing which customers I'm meeting or what projects I'm choosing to spend my time on, what are my priorities, more than at a once-a-month staff meeting or whatever. So there's still a cultural barrier, and I see that in lots of our customers, and I think it just stems from the personal nature of calendaring. And that's probably the last piece that I would say kind of in the future we still have to address as an industry. I get, as a vendor, more feature requests for calendar than any other part of our messaging collaboration, because calendaring is an intensely personal activity. How I want to operate is different than how the next person wants to operate. And it's different in Japan, and it's different in Israel, and it's different in Germany, and you know, we build a horizontal product, right? So, you know, we almost shipped Notes version 8 without the ability to see the week number in the Notes 8 calendar. And at the last minute, I basically stopped the ship because we hadn't put that feature in and we had planned to put it in later. I said, you can't ship a calendar without week number support for the German market because they drive events around, well, in week 17, we're going to do X. Or in Japan, they really want to view calendars horizontally and not vertically because of the cultural hierarchy within the country. Or in, you know, Hebrew, it's got to really go right to left, and the work week has to start on Sunday, not on Monday. And you know, so the feature requests are constant because there are cultural differences around the world, and every individual has a feeling of how they want to do it. And then the other impact is every new device that comes out has a different way of calendaring, and so people want to borrow the best and worst. For me right now, my big inflection point is, as I keep looking at it, my iPad sitting over there, great calendar system. Apple, as always, has done a really great job on usability, but guess what? There's no free time search, there's no ability to counter-propose, there's no ability to delegate a meeting to somebody else. I can't even send comments in if I accept a meeting. There's nothing, it's yes, no, maybe. So really great interface, but because they've narrowed the scope so much on what they're going to actually try to accomplish. Well, of course, if I was building a simple calendar interface, it'd look pretty hot right now too. But if I'm trying to build one that does everything, you know, it's more complicated.
Which brings me to another point. And it actually, I think it brings in a few subjects at the same time. You've got privacy of information, what you're willing to share with other people, and so on. You've got, if you look at the Notes calendar, you look at Outlook calendar, you look at, all these different calendars. You take out the logo, they pretty much all look the same. A 7-day grid, or depending on the visualization, on a day or a week or whatever. Yeah. Pretty much the look is the same. Do you think, and that grid view, before people had day planners, so it wasn't really a grid view. It was day planners, and you had Monday too, but then when we went on the PC, we started to have the grid view, and it hasn't really evolved.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to evolve? Do you think people are willing to evolve? And if so, how do you think that will evolve?
Well, there's a lot of PC metaphors that are still stuck in some past experience, and I often think it's kind of one of the spare daydreaming things that I sit there and think about. If we didn't have this installed base, what would we do differently? You can do that about anything. My favorite one is if we didn't have stoplights today, red, yellow, green, simple lights on a pole. What would, in 2010, if you had a bunch of traffic engineers try to come up with a traffic control signal for an intersection, would they come up with 3 little lights on a post? No way. So, but that's what we have, right? That's what we have in 2010. We're stuck with it because you're never going to teach the whole world some different metaphor, right? And, even in 2010, the metaphor of a folder within your mail or the icon to save in most applications still looks like a floppy disk. And I haven't seen a physical floppy disk in at least, 10 years, right? So we get stuck in these metaphors of the past because of the curse of the installed base. And that's no offense to anybody as an end user, but when you've trained millions of people to do something, teaching them to do it a different way is really a challenge. So again, as slick as an iPad or a BlackBerry or whatever is today in 2010, they've still stuck with the metaphors that computing industry invented 10 or 20 years ago. It will take some major inflection activity to get people comfortable doing it some other way. And I think activity-based may be the way to do that, but we've been talking about that now.
What do you mean by activity-based?
So I'm more focused on this project and this thing that I want to work on than some time slot and some email that somebody sent me. But we've been talking about that concept within our research team for 6 years now. Some of it's in our product today, but we still can't get to a metaphor that's different. It still ties to the existing tools and systems. It could be that there's a better way out there, and our researchers have some really good ideas, but even when I see them do new research projects, they still start with a grid and calendaring. So I think that it's going to be some major inflection event. Maybe it's around location services, maybe it's around some cloud thing that we don't know of yet.
Do you think the mobile can play a role in there?
I think mobile's probably the key there, right? Because mobile is where the innovation's happening right now. Faster than I can write software, I can see mobile devices with 6-month lifespan coming out with new interfaces and new capabilities. So if that's the place where it will happen, consumer adoption happens there as well. And that's the thing driving a lot of IT is the end user can go buy their own mobile device in most companies. Right? So I can choose to adopt an iPhone, I can choose to adopt a BlackBerry, I can choose to adopt a Nokia. Nobody's choosing to adopt Windows Mobile, but anyway, sorry. But as an end user, if I'm making that choice, I'm making that choice based on, Android has these really great features, but by the way, Android doesn't have a calendar that's built into the operating system yet. And even in Froyo 2.2, they have some sort of vague day-at-a-glance thing and personal calendar, but they don't have an enterprise calendar function built in. So now it's up to us as a vendor to go fill that hole, right? So every device is doing things different, and now that more of them have an app store model where a user can put their own stuff on there, users will adopt what makes sense to them. I don't like the way that Twitter looks, so I'll go to Flipbook. I'm not really excited about, the Facebook app as it's installed. I'm going to go to some different UI, right? I could use the browser for half these things, but the apps have actually made it much more interesting or useful. Right? The New York Times publishes a perfectly good website, but they have an app on there that takes that website and formats it specifically for the iPad, so I'm using that. Right? So I think that users will prod it along, but I don't know what the thing is that they're going to latch onto.
Have you tried Flipboard, by the way?
Yeah, I'm using it.
What do you think about it?
I think it's great.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same information that we're used to seeing every day. It's just displayed differently, and people are like, "Oh, I never knew you had that information."
Well, the thing that they did that's smart is they go one level down on the links.
Yeah.
Right? Because half those links that you see in a Twitter stream, you'd probably never click on, but all of a sudden you're reading the article or the summary of the article and go, oh, that's pretty interesting. So this morning I learned some guy in Switzerland got a speeding ticket for $1 million based on driving his Mercedes around at 200 miles an hour somewhere in Switzerland. And the fine system in Switzerland is based on the income of the person who got stopped and all sorts of things. So this guy was 600,000 pounds, so about $1 million US, speeding ticket. And it was on my Twitter stream, and it was on Facebook, and it was on TechCrunch. So all of them came together in Flipboard. So
That's interesting. Yes, I really think that there's ways that we're used to our calendar grid, and that's gonna change.
Yeah.
Because it's ingrained in everybody, but I do think that there's place for innovation on visualization, and it depends on what you like. For example, like the ability you talked about, the ability to suggest stuff to do. You won't have that pop up from a square in your calendar.
Right.
There's got to be a different way of visualizing what you could be doing during that time, and then how does that link back into the grid, and how do you get out of it? Or you travel a lot, right? And there's if I'm in the office, the grid works for me. But if I'm traveling, I would like to see my day in a totally different format. For example, where I want to see my itinerary. This is where you're going to be going. This is and these are the routes you're going to have to take, and this is the time that you have to estimate. So, by the way, don't book a meeting during that, or you can do only a phone call or whatever. Your calendar should be intelligent for you, right?
Yeah, we're starting to take steps in that direction.
Yeah.
But it really does all have to come together, and overlays don't do that yet. They're not intelligent enough to look at each other. So it's still, I have that meeting from 1 to 2, and then I need a drive time, and then I need a this and a bio break, and how are we going to schedule those in there? Right?
Yeah.